We got a couple of things going on these days, and I finally got my act together. And what we are doing is a daily cup of Joe now, every day of the week. Yep, that's correct. That I'm doing a work 5 days a week. Monday through Thursday. Yeah, I'm doing good this evening. That's what I get for getting a late start on things like this. So, one of the things we're working on is Daily Cup of Joe. Right now, got it scheduled for 5 days a week from 6 to 6:30. Yes, you get 30 minutes of me every day. Yay! Saturday, we got things going on. We'll set that up from about noon to 1. You get an hour of me and my smiley, shining face on Saturday. And we'll see what happens on Sunday. But so one of the things I want to look at is just see what sort of options we got moving forward. What sort of things do you think are important, especially for the congressional run, and seeing what it is we're moving forward with that. So you go ahead and open it up. We got a little bit of Ask Me Anything. I now have this set up to broadcast live, 3 different places at the same time. Yes, 3. 3. Figure out how to make that work. So I'm broadcasting live on Twitter, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, simultaneously. Yes. Contribute to my campaign. I'll actually be able to do an upgrade so that I can add a few more streams to the feed. That way you can see me on more different platforms. You can share me on more different platforms. Yeah, working with my lighting issue. It's one of the other things I got when I start late is the light fades. So I lose all of that great lighting, from beautiful evening sun here in Meridian, Idaho. I'm actually in Meridian tonight. I'm out at Kleiner Park. I'm going to be kicking us all out soon because it's after dark. But, so, thank you, Ginger. Love the mug. Yeah, that gloss really doesn't work with the lighting I'm using tonight. So, some of you are actually liking what's going on. So, like I said, you got the links for the 3 different places you can catch me live. My actual live stream, aside from my premiere, my test run will be tomorrow. So go ahead, log on, check out the event on Facebook. Go ahead, leave something in the discussion. Let me know what you want to talk about that night. What is important to you? Because this is my listening tour. The nice thing is, I'm going to do it almost every day, which means you get plenty of me over the next couple of weeks to go ahead and evaluate what's going on in your life and in America, see what's important, and we can discuss solutions. And that's really what we're about. We're about finding solutions to America's problems right now. Anyone, open for comments, folks. Open for comments. What do you want to talk about? Okay, so we got a couple different things going on. Default, logo, overlay. So you're going to make me pick an issue. Awesome. You know how much I hate that. Bring our troops home. Let's go ahead and make that a banner. you guys got to put up with me on my initial test run here. So we're going to try a couple of things. There we go. Bring our troops. Yeah, that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and edit that just a little bit more. There we go. That's better. Libertarian solution. Bring our troops home. The reason why bring our troops home is very important is because currently we're spending more than $700 billion a year in order to manage force projection. Now, that's $700 billion a year that's authorized by the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA, which is renewed every year, complete with all of the boondoggles and pork barrel projects that are associated with the United States military, including funding for bogus plans for the F-35, which after, 15, 20 years, still has not proven itself as a combat-ready aircraft. It also includes bogus things like tanks that the Army doesn't need. Can't remember who it was that was authorized to actually go through and continue building tanks that the Army said, no, we don't want them. But right now, that's a $700 billion that is authorized by the NDAA. That doesn't even take into consideration the discretionary budget of the executive branch. That is, how much of the discretionary budget does the president and his cabinet have to spend that money on? Okay. Which is still a lot more. So we step back and we take a look at how much the federal government spends on war, especially force projection in order to maintain troops in over 150 countries around the world, 7 of which we are currently using drones and aircraft to bomb into submission, whether we are talking Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen. Okay, so no direct action in Yemen. However, we still support the Saudi Arabian military in their actions. So yes, that is U.S. munitions being used in Yemen, even though the Saudis are the ones flying the planes. Yes. How does that feel, knowing that we continue to support one of the primary exports of Wahhabism? Yes, for those of you who look up Wahhabism, that is, yep, absolutely, William, bring our troops home. Wahhabism is one of the fundamentalist cults of Islam, and it is the most extreme. If you were to take Christian identity, supremacy, and convert it into Islam, that's its comparative. Islamic identity, fundamentalist Islam. That's who we support, man, especially when we support Saudi Arabia. So, absolutely, bring our troops home. Now, there's an awful lot of people that argue, hey, well, yeah, absolutely. We've been in Afghanistan and Iraq for nearly 20 years now, but we have infrastructure there. Why should we surrender the infrastructure? Because if we surrender the infrastructure, other nations can come in and actually take over the role of supporting Afghanistan and Iraq. Considering how much it costs us annually in order to maintain our infrastructure and organizations in Afghanistan and Iraq, I'm personally willing to let somebody else take over that bill, even if it does happen to be Russia or China, neither of which have the economy that the United States does in order to continue to sustain that operational level. Yeah, that's right. I said that. The United States economy is strong enough that we can continue to support an infrastructure that neither China nor Russia will be able to utilize to its fullest extent if we just walk away from all of the infrastructure we've built over the last 20 years, some of which is already falling into disrepair because of continued counter operations against U.S. troops. So, yeah, just walk away. It's costing us, and it's not benefiting us in any significant way in which we really want to admit to. And right now, we got conflicts here in the United States. We have insurgency and counterinsurgency operations. I'm not sure which side you want to consider which is, considering what's going on between the Proud Boys, Trump supporters, Antifa, BLM. We'll get into the discussions of the various points of our violent insurgencies versus our peaceful insurgencies. Yeah, I know that's a contentious area right now. Thing is, we got that happening here in the United States. The United States cannot, right? You know, right now, the violence that is going on because of Proud Boys and Antifa and the violent protesters across the United States continues to benefit companies that supply wars. Reason why is because they're selling up-armored vehicles to our law enforcement organizations all across the country. You know, the more violence is happening here in the U.S., the more they continue to profit by selling. And thing is, law enforcement across the United States represents a significantly larger portion for potential militarization than actual U.S. troops in the service across the United States. You know, we're saturated on tanks. You know, if the United States Army isn't buying tanks and MRAPs anymore, who else can we sell them to? Oh, yes. American law enforcement. So, yeah, we're back to that situation. Absolutely. Only benefits people who are supplying war machines. Our conflict, our insurgencies here in the United States only benefit the war machine. Yep, absolutely. We need to demilitarize. Now, a lot of people are talking defund the police. Now, from a libertarian perspective, most of us recognize that that's a dead end because it's only temporary. You defund the police this cycle, they're refunded next cycle. Matter of fact, they continue to receive funding upgrades on a significantly more regular basis than American education does. Yes. We spend more, we add more to police budgets as we take money away from education budgets on a per capita basis. Funny how that works. If you spent more money on schools, you could spend less money on cops and prisons. So it gets back to the demilitarization of law enforcement, particularly with regards. So from a libertarian perspective, yes, we want to defund the police, but in order to actually defund the police, you have to get rid of certain missions that the police currently execute. One of those is the war on drugs. Yes. Right now, at least 20% of our prison population across the United States is in on mandatory minimum sentences for what is essentially entrapment. They bought drugs from one undercover agent to turn around and sell to a different undercover agent. Yes, they weren't actually dealers themselves. They were just moving drugs between. Yeah, keep them stupid. Keep the penitentiaries full. Yes. We'll discuss 13th Amendment and the institution and rebranding of slavery in America. We'll cover that a different day. The reason why is because it's just too deep to go into these days. No, actually, we are talking about it right now. So, but yeah, you're stupid, keep them in the penitentiary, keep the slaves full. I mean, right now, here in the state of Idaho, Governor Brad Little has actually said that the prisoners that are actually working on the prison farms, yes, we have prison farms in the state of Idaho. Those prison farms will be providing fresh produce directly to the Idaho food banks. Yes. We're using prison labor to keep food in the Idaho food banks. Think about that for a moment, folks. Think about that. While everybody is starving because they cannot afford to go to the grocery store, and we turn around and we go to the food banks in order to make sure we have food to eat, food to feed our families. That food is currently being provided by slave labor from our penal institutions. Yeah, I know. We don't call it slave labor because that's not PC. Penal labor, prison labor. Yes, 13th Amendment. We can make slaves out of people who are serving prison sentences. 20% of those people are on mandatory minimum riders across the United States. Probably another 20 to 30% are back in for probation violations related to, guess what? Pissing hot on a urinalysis test. Probation violation. For smoking dope in order to cope with the trauma, because that is the only thing they can afford to do these days because of the cost of psychological treatment in the United States. Yep. That's what we're looking at. And it's getting dark. Sort of like this ghost effect, though, man. Silhouette. A bright white face and ugly beard sitting here against the blackness. But yeah, absolutely. Thing is that process of filling prisons in the United States in order to create a labor force that is dirt cheap has become extremely popular in the last 20 years. Well, 25. Reason why is because the 1994 crime bill created by Joe Biden is one of those that actually made private prisons profitable at scale, or created the scale at which they are profitable. Is that increased how full our prisons got, how fast our prison population filled, right? 45 to 100,000 plus per prisoner to house and care. Yep. Could you imagine what we'd be doing if we simply contributed to the economy, at 45,000 in healthcare for each of those prisoners that are in on drug offenses so that they can get better while they're still allowed to work on the economy as part of the economy rather than becoming part of the prison economy? And of course, as a libertarian, I'm not going to use that solution because that's a welfare solution. We can come up with better solutions to that, especially when it comes to the tune of $45,000. It's not going to cost that much in order to keep somebody housed on the economy, keep them fed on the economy, and get them the appropriate psychological care, emotional care necessary in order to get them off of drugs. Yes, I know everybody says you legalize drugs, everybody's going to become a drug addict. It's not actually the case. You create the socioeconomic environment in which people do not need drugs in order to blank themselves out from the trauma of their lives. Guess what? They don't use drugs. Well, at least not to the point where they become addicts. And that's a whole different conversation where we start talking about the issue of the dystopian rat cage. Yes, junk science from the 50s actually teaches us some things. Mainly that it was bad science at the time. However, it still provided science that's relative to socioeconomic behavior patterns related to the socioeconomic society culture that we currently developed in the United States. Yes. Right? Start investing in education. If we were to take that $45,000 per 40% of our prison population across the United States, just take 40% and take them out of the prisons and put them back into the economy and reinvest $45,000 per person that is released from prison back into the economy, back into our schools. And just think about what that would do as far as Idaho's education. Prime example. Idaho's education, $45,000 per, let's see, we got somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10,000 prisoners, from the state of Idaho right now, 10,000. So that would be 45,000, 10,000, 450. That would be an extra 5 million, if my math is right. Be an extra 5 million plugged into the education system overnight just by transitioning. Yeah, absolutely. Brian, I absolutely appreciate the free money the government gives you too, because without it, you wouldn't be in the school you're in. You brilliant young kid. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Brian is my genius. But yeah. Well, actually, that's a funny thing, William, is most people with a very good income will do drugs, but they do them recreationally. They don't become addicts unless the environment in which they're earning their income in is highly stressful. It's one of those. Yes, the new moon. It is dark out here. I really do need to consider getting on my way. Otherwise, they're going to kick me out of the park here as soon as the cops catch up with me. But I mean, really, if we had a good economy going and most of our drugs were legalized so that we could control, and even just going with a regular sales tax on recreational drugs, here in the state of Idaho, for those people who have income and aren't likely to become addicts as a result of that, because of their improved income basis, what sort of sales would we be looking at in Idaho and the United States? As far as recreational and or medical sales on that issue. Of course, that's one of those that needs to be individually balanced. We've seen success stories and failures across the United States, depending on how different states have implemented their medical marijuana program versus the recreational programs, and how one would actually cause the other to fail. Yeah, so definitely we have options, we have solutions as we continue to move forward with an awful lot of things that we want to do. As one of my friends who is a libertarian likes to say on a fairly regular basis, we don't necessarily talk too much about why we want to do the things we do, just what it is we want to do. Ooh, good question, Brian. So, yeah, two things. William, yes, Idaho's money would not be going to other states if we were to legalize the drugs. We were to legalize marijuana here in the state of Idaho. Right now, just across the border, basically on all 5 of our borders here in the United States, we got Washington, Oregon, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana. Each one of them has legalized or recreational and or medical to some degree. So a lot of our people that are in proximity to a border make regular trips across the border. Here in Boise, the nearest dispensaries are right across the border in Ontario, Oregon. With regards to that, Ontario, Oregon is raking in buku bucks with Ada County license plates sitting in their dispensary parking lots, picking up, their week supply before going back. Yeah, Wanda, it is a Mormon state. The funny thing about Mormon states is they do recognize money as much as morals. Reason why is because take a look at our beer sales, take a look at our alcohol sales. We will, the Mormons, the LDS, will make allowances for people who aren't of the LDS to buy the things that they wouldn't use themselves as long as it makes somebody money. We just haven't convinced them that yet that the money is worth more than their moral stance. No, yeah, Wanda. Salt Lake City's ran by the LDS Church. All of Utah is run by the LDS Church. The bulk of it is Mormon. Utah has legalized it, at least to some degree. So it is within the capacity of the state of Idaho to make it happen. Brian, back to your question. If I could snap my fingers and make marijuana legal everywhere or make it legal everywhere over a longer period of time, which would I pick? I'd snap my fingers and make it legal everywhere, essentially overnight. We've already learned our lessons in a lot of the states. I think 35 of the 50 right now currently have legalized marijuana in some capacity, whether it's medical marijuana or recreational or some combination of the two. We've seen the lessons learned. We've seen the lessons learned in some of those states. Oregon in particular, they opened it up to producers to go ahead and produce as much as they wanted, and they overproduced for the market. Oregon literally grew more marijuana than they could sell. Imagine that. Yes, it is possible. So while an awful lot of people saw it as a cash crop, an awful lot of people went bankrupt trying to make cash off of it simply because they couldn't sell it after they grew it. Boom. So, yes, I'd make it legalized everywhere and recognize that the farmers and the growers across the United States would actually have to continue to maintain cover crops besides marijuana in order to meet their financial goals at the end of the year. Anyone to know? Coffee, tea, and wife. A lot of that depends on which LDS branch you're looking at. Fundamentalist LDS, yes, they do that, despite the fact that polygamy is still illegal in Utah and the state of Idaho. That goes clear back to when those states were founded. Now there are fundamentalist communes, LDS communes, and of course we all got our favorite jokes. Take out Little. It's 2 more years before I can run for state governor. Yeah. In the meantime, I am running for Congress. That would put me in D.C., wouldn't have me sitting in the White House, wouldn't put me here in Boise as the governor of Idaho. Said I think some of you that like my policies from a federal decision point wouldn't necessarily like my more localized policies. Reason why is because I do believe in following the Idaho Constitution. Idaho Constitution does have some government obligations that I don't agree with federal control over. One of those happens to be education. As a congressman, I would absolutely 100% disassemble the Department of Education because I don't believe the federal government should have any control over the way the states run education. But the Idaho state government does have a constitutional responsibility to fund public education in the state. Anyway, that's sort of an aside the point. But oh yeah, abolish private prisons. No private institution should be making money off of human slavery, not as long as the 13th Amendment continues to exist in its current form. Thanks, William. You have a great night too. Get some sleep, man. You know, I'm closing up on 30 minutes tonight. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk. Abolish private prisons or no? No one should make profit off of human slavery, plain and simple. 13th Amendment as it exists and the penal labor provisions provided under the 13th Amendment continues to allow private industries to profit, therefore creating contracts with government in order to maintain full beds in those institutions, I mean, literally, when we set up private contracts, they decide, they set it up and say, this particular prison has 2,000 beds in it. It will cost you $45,000 per bed, whether there is a prisoner in that bed or not. Yeah, no, doesn't work for me. So abolish private prisons. Absolutely. Oh, and Wanda, my Mormon joke. Yeah, how do you keep a Mormon from drinking all the beer and smoking all the dope at your party? Make sure you invite 2 of them over. Yes, yes, yes. And if you're LDS, you get the joke. You shouldn't, but you do. 30 minutes, folks. So tomorrow, starting 6 o'clock. Leave a note in one of my sessions, one of my pages. Let me know what you want to talk about tomorrow night. That way I can go ahead and have a prepared answer rather than this ad hoc stuff. Thank you for your questions tonight, Brian. Love you. Keep doing great things. Make things happen there. Love you guys. Take care of each other. Family, it's important. Friends and neighbors, it's important. So, I'm going to back up. I still got a 22 a day for 22 days that I got to do a little bit later on this evening. You'll catch that in about 30 minutes, and that's going to be about all of 30 seconds long. Love you guys. Peace. Vote for me. Send me money. Help me get those commercials for my campaign. Send me to Congress. Help me replace Russ Fulcher in Washington, D.C. Peace, guys.